Welcome to the Data On webinar. My name is Howard Lowe. I'm the Vice President of Sales and Marketing here at Data On. And very happy to see you guys again. So today we talk about Azure Migrate, but before doing that, I want to kind of go through the state of the Azure Stack HCI and the world that we live in. And again, feel free to ask questions if you have any. So the title I have today is really a journey to hybrid cloud. And given all the opportunity in the marketplace, we really believe that Azure Stack HCI is really ripe for adoption across all enterprises, especially with the challenges that a lot of customers face with VMware. Before going to the detail, I think it's important to share the fact that when we talk to many of the enterprise customers, we always stress the fact that it's a journey. It's a journey that every single customer is different. Where you're at and where your technology is at is different. So we want to make sure we meet you at where you're at and really help you address your challenges. When we talk to customers, many of the customers, even today on the call here today, are still at the three-tier legacy SAN where they have VMware, and nothing wrong with that technology. However, as the hybrid cloud continues to mature, I think it's important to know that there's a lot of options out there. And the world of Microsoft, where we live in, I think Microsoft has a great solution where they continue to help enterprise innovate from a three-tier SAN to a hyper-converged infrastructure where you could have the ability to scale out and scale up and have the ability to really deliver a platform that's very scalable. Once that transitions happen, you now have the advantage to really take advantage of all the capability that Microsoft offers with Azure, especially with Azure services. And this is where the hybrid cloud Azure Stack HCI really come in. I speak to many customers, as you know, and in the conversation with the customer, we always talk about what are the challenges they have. And I think these challenges I listed here really pop up quite a bit. One is, hey, I'm on VMware today, I'm on SAN today, how do I transition to HCI? How do I transition to hybrid cloud? Can we share that journey with you? Is Microsoft virtualization ready prime time for compared to VMware? We hope to have that discussion as well. But at the same time, I think one big one that comes up all the time is, how do I, as I continue to modernize my infrastructure, how do I build in business continuity and disaster recovery? I think with Microsoft, you have a lot of great tools out there that allows you to have that capability, especially with Azure Site Recovery. Lastly, I think one of the key benefits and features that Microsoft offers to a lot of enterprise customers is they give you the best of two worlds, right? You could continue to have an infrastructure on-prem, but at the same time, because Azure Stack HCI is built with cloud in mind, you really truly have a hybrid cloud where you can take advantage of all the Azure services, such as AVD, AI at the edge. So these are capabilities, because you have a hybrid cloud, really help you deliver a complete comprehensive solution. Just a big picture of what this looks like. This is the world of Azure Stack HCI, where for those people who's not familiar, you have an infrastructure that sits on premises in your data center, but it's really hybrid ready, right? On top of it, you lay on top of the Azure Stack HCI OS, which is an iteration of years of technology in the making since 2012, right? This is not something that just introduced, but this has been in the marketplace and enterprise been using it for the last 12 years, especially Microsoft's using it. That's most important. In that Azure Stack HCI OS, you have a virtualization layer, you have a storage layer called Storage Spaces Direct, and you have a networking layer called Software-Defined Networking. All these capabilities are incorporated into Azure Stack HCI OS. We can deploy the complete solution. Once the infrastructure is set up, now you decide how you want to deploy your solution, whether or not as a virtual machines, that you can run virtualization, Windows, Linux, or AVD, or you can do container services with Microsoft offer Azure Kubernetes services. Once that's deployed, now you have all the Azure features currently in Azure. Now you could project down to your on-premise infrastructure, whether or not it's monitoring, security, AKS, all these capability that Microsoft allow you to project into your infrastructure while manage it in a single pane of glass with Azure Arc. I think that's the beauty of Azure Stack HCI and hybrid cloud, where you do have a single pane of glass in Azure called Azure Arc that you can see all your services in a single pane of glass. But more importantly, I think as many enterprise understand, security is a foundational infrastructure. And I think with the new Azure Stack HCI, especially with 23H2 that's already in the marketplace, security is top of mind for Microsoft and all the customers. Not only does Microsoft build root of trust for the infrastructure, but they layer down different security layer across with BitLocker encryption to ensure that your data is secure, right? And even in Azure Stack HCI, even before you deploy, there's 300 features and security that's already built in to make sure that you have the most secure infrastructure under Azure Stack HCI. Many customer has adopted this technology. This is, this is a sliver of data on customer that we engage with to move into Azure Stack HCI, and they're currently using it for the production workload. And you can see that these customers span across all vertical segment and different workload. It could be state local government SLID, it could be K-12 school, retail, financial organization, healthcare has been very hot recently, especially with AVD. You can see the adoption of Azure Stack HCI really is prevalent across all industry, and this has been proven technology as an enterprise-ready technology. In a nutshell, right, at the end of the day, it's a set of building blocks that data on provides, but more importantly, we deliver a complete service where we're offered the infrastructure that's validated, certified by Microsoft to help you deliver that infrastructure. But more importantly, there's a lot of validation testing that goes in to make sure that your Azure Stack HCI is ready for production. With data on in Microsoft, we deliver a complete integrated system, which includes easy procurement, easy to update your firmware driver with Lifecycle Manager, continuous testing with Microsoft, and high security in place. All these are capabilities that's important to enterprise customer, but more importantly, support. I think because of Azure Stack HCI and all the capability, Microsoft has really stepped up into their support. Both with data on and Microsoft, we provide 24/7 support for your customer to ensure that you have a peace of mind when you run these technology in your production workload. And you'll see that if you go to the Microsoft catalog today, that you'll see a lot of different solutions. And please go look at it and look at different tier Azure Stack HCI. And Data On really offer the most comprehensive offering for Azure Stack HCI integrated system that deliver a turnkey and white glove service for our customer. So that's kind of the background about Azure Stack HCI. But I think it's important to know today there's a lot of drivers. I've been talking to customers for the last 12 months, especially when Broadcom announced the acquisition of VMware, and a lot of customers are looking for options, right? The option could be they want to have a broader product set, they want an option of pricing and support. All of these are reasons why we're seeing an influx of customers looking at options, and we really do believe Azure Stack HCI is a right solution for many enterprise customers for all the capability you want. Recently, actually, Veeam actually did a survey with CIOs and asking the question, hey, customers, what are the alternatives out there for alternative hypervisor? And clearly on the top of the chart is Azure Stack HCI with Hyper-V. This is something that it's been in the marketplace for a long time. It's been proven technology, and especially now with all the capability that Azure Stack HCI bring to the table, we really do believe Hyper-V and Azure Stack HCI is the right solution for you as we continue to move forward. There's a lot of comparison that people want to do between Azure Stack HCI and VMware. I think at the end of the day, it's about the fact that both technology are great, but Azure Stack HCI really give you the capability, hybrid cloud and capability. It's scalable, it's performing, it has a lot of capability with virtualization, VDI, and I think that's why many customers believe it's the right time to switch to Azure Stack HCI. I want to spend 2 slides on some myth. A lot of questions ask the question is Hyper-V ready for prime time? The answer is absolutely. All the Fortune 500 customers with Azure Stack HCI are using virtualization from Microsoft as their underlying virtualization technology. And Hyper-V has been continued to develop to make sure they're ready. Hyper-V is not just continued as part of Windows Server, it's part of the virtualization that Microsoft uses across the board. It's enterprise level solution. And it's easy to use. All our customers shift quite easily from the VMware ESX world to virtualization with Hyper-V. It is not something that is very hard to do. And at the end of the day, Hyper-V are used across all Microsoft infrastructure, Xboxes, their server, Azure tenant, all of them have this virtualization platform as Hyper-V. We have a blog on this, and Microsoft has a blog on that as well, please feel free to look at it and make sure that you demystify the myth that absolutely Microsoft with Hyper-V is ready for prime time and is ready for Azure Stack HCI. Fresh off the press, recently, just I think a couple of days ago, Gartner announced their newest refresh for the Magic Quadrant for distributed hyper infrastructure, and Microsoft again came on top as a leader for this particular quadrant. It's leader because they offer a comprehensive cloud-native infrastructure, and it offers a single offering from partner like us that deliver a complete turnkey solution. And really, this is a testament to the fact that Microsoft has spent a lot of time, effort to make sure this is enterprise-ready, robust as a technology for our capabilities. And we're very happy that data also was mentioned in the entire Gartner as the solution provider that deliver a partner solution for Microsoft. So really excited to do that. Last two slides. Consideration for migration, I think Shri will go into it. We talked to a lot of customers, and as you continue to look at option to migrate from a VMware environment to Azure Stack HCI, we want to make sure you consider these options. Looking at risk, making sure you mitigated risk in production workload, make sure you test before you do anything, make sure that you have data integrity across the board and minimize downtime. Those are considerations I believe that Shri will touch upon with Azure Migrate and help you guys in that process. And there are many options out there, right? You could, through the traditional way, you can use Veeam Backup Restore, but we really do believe Azure Migrate is the right native tool that Microsoft has now offered to help you deliver that solution service across the board. Now that Azure Migrate is in public preview, which we're very excited about, I think now is the time to really look at this technology as a way to migrate your VMware VM to Azure Stack HCI. Not only that, you can extend all the capability that you have into Azure Stack HCI, being its Arc enabled, being that it stays on-prem, all that capability. Without further ado, I'll pass the baton to Shri, and Shri could go to the Azure Migrate with you guys. Thank you.
All right, thank you, Howard. Let me start my presentation really quickly. All right, can you guys let me know when you see it?
Let me see here. Almost, yes. Perfect.
All righty. Thank you very much for that detailed introduction, by the way. That's precisely the context as I was going to set as well. Especially the Hyper-V technology, pretty spot on. Generally something that we use pretty widely, even inside Microsoft, to run our own production services. And the point that you made about migration being a journey, absolutely as well. That is something that I wanted to re-emphasize. Plan your migrations, test your workloads, and use the most comfortable tool for you to get your workloads off of VMware onto the Microsoft platform. So with that, as I mentioned at the beginning of the call, my name is Shriram Natarajan, and my primary responsibilities are right now to kind of work on our Azure Migrate offering for VMware to HCI migrations. Before I get into this, is going to be an engineering sort of a discussion, by the way. So it's not going to be a high-level thing. I'm going to jump into some architecture slides and we really drill down into how things work. But before I get into the nuts and bolts of how this works, I just want to set a broader picture on what we're doing here. The name of the game for us right now is to be able to meet customers where they are. We realize that with the industry being as wide as it is and the solutions being in the market for as long as they have, there's a different wide array of customers that have different use cases and different solutions, and no one particular solution can kind of do a one size fits all here. So the goal, the key point for us here at Microsoft is to be able to go meet customers where they are and offer solutions wherever they need them. So when we talk to customers, and this general framing might be very familiar to all of you here at this point. When we go talk to customers, there's realistically two options here when they want to get out of VMware. One is move to the cloud, be able to embrace the innovation that's happening in the cloud and be able to move your workloads to the cloud and embrace that mindset. Or we have customers doing that, but they're like, there's this critical set of applications that I absolutely must keep on premises for various reasons. And this could be because of residency reasons. This could be because of company policy reasons. This could be because data needs to be processed close to where it's generated, and the latency that it takes for the round trip to go to the cloud and come back may not be amenable to that business. Whatever reason, right? We have customers telling us, hey, there's some critical piece of infrastructure that needs to stay on premises, and we need a solution for that as well. So for those customers that are going from VMware and can go to the cloud, absolute recommendation is to go to AVS. This is the fastest path to the cloud. You're able to keep your existing workforce talent, your skill set, your automations, and just be able to lift your workloads up from on-premises VMware and be able to move it to Azure and run it on AVS. And if you use the 3-year, 5-year RI offerings that AVS has, you now have peace of mind with respect to your budget as well, which is one of the critical concerns that a lot of VMware customers have today in the current market. Right? If you can go to the cloud, AVS is your absolute fastest path to get to the cloud. We also have customers that are, okay, now that I'm at this inflection point, let me make a measured decision and let me actually just modernize my application as well while I move it from my on-premises VMware instance. And for those folks, going to the cloud, migrate to native Azure IaaS and PaaS is absolutely a good option. You now have the time and the ability to being able to shift your applications, modernize them, re-architect them, and be able to make them cloud native, so to speak, and run on Azure. And this will get you out of the VMware ecosystem pretty quickly because this is going to be on native Azure IaaS. Now, for those applications that have to stay on premises, we see customers in 2 different buckets. One bucket is, hey, I'm looking to a cloud migration in the future. I'm just not ready to do it right now. I have various reasons for not being able to do it right now, but definitely some of these applications going to the cloud is the final end state for those things. And for those customers, we recommend that you Arc enable your vSphere instance. What that does is help you leverage the same Azure services that you would potentially use when you're in the cloud directly on your vSphere instance. You should be able to look at your virtual machines, be able to apply policy, be able to use Azure Defender, all of the goodness that Azure Arc offers by extending Azure services to on-premises assets, they will get by Arc enabling their vSphere instance right away. And when the time is right and they want to move part of that portfolio to the cloud, it becomes a straightforward conversation with their teams because they've already trained them to operate in a cloud-based mindset. Now, if the need to get out of VMware is imminent, and you're one of those people that are looking at a price increase like 2x, 3x, and we've heard a lot higher as well. And if your immediate imminent need is to be able to reduce your VMware footprint and get out of VMware, Azure Stack HCI is an absolute fit for you guys here. This will be for customers that want cloud management on premises, be able to embrace cloud practices on premises, and operate on a Microsoft ecosystem. And this will get you out of VMware as well. Now, as Howard mentioned, Azure Stack HCI goes from 1 node all the way up to 16 nodes, and it's based on a lot of the OEM hardware, including Dataon being our critical partners here. But we still have customers that say, hey, I want a bigger footprint, or I have more advanced requirements, and I've been on a VMware disaggregated deployment for so long. I have a mass of SAN storage sitting in there. I want to be able to reuse that stuff. Right now, you're not able to do that with HCI. What are my options? We tell them, please go deploy Windows Server and Hyper-V. And with System Center, you should be able to manage your fleet of Windows Server deployments as well. And we will be able to get that bucket of customers as well. So as I said, the name of the game is to being able to meet the customers where they are and being able to make sure that whatever scenarios they have in their current situation can be accommodated in a Microsoft ecosystem, and they feel safe and well taken care of as they move to a Microsoft ecosystem here. So that's the high level frame that I have to set for you. Now, jumping from there directly into what it is that we do. We've taken the Azure Migrate service that generally is used for migrating on-premises VMs into Azure, and we've made it work for Azure Stack HCI as well as one of the deployment targets for these VMs. This was in private preview all along. As of October, it is in public preview. We're working on our GA for this thing. And we've already seen a ton of interest from customers on this, both even from a private preview phase to now even in public preview, this has just amplified the need for customers requiring a solution to natively move into Azure Stack HCI. Some key highlights of this solution, and again, I will double click into the architecture in the upcoming 5 minutes, but at a high level, this is agentless, which means that this directly can sit at a deployment level and talk directly to vCenter and be able to migrate your VMs, and you do not have to install agents inside each of your VMs. So this becomes very easy to use when you're at scale and you're operating at a larger footprint. It uses the same familiar Azure Migrate experience. So if you're already migrating to Azure, this will just extend that experience and be able to help you fully migrate your VMs with the same guided experiences in the Azure portal. Now, the orchestration happens from the Azure portal, as I just talked to you guys about, but the data that's being migrated stays completely on-premises. The data just goes from your on-premises VMware footprint to your on-premises HCI deployment, with the data just being inside your data center. Nothing about the data inside your VMs. The disks get completely local. Nothing about the data inside your VMs goes to Azure. The one more, and I think this is one of the most important things as far as I'm concerned, value that Azure Migrate also offers is that your workloads on the VMware infrastructure, your source workloads, as we like to call them, they continue to stay running while your replication happens. And replication is basically us copying the disks over from VMware to HCI, and then we have a phase called cutover, which will move the VMs over. During that phase where the data is being copied from VMware to HCI, all of that happens in the background. So your source application continues to keep running. And so when you're ready to migrate, you declare a service window and you cut over. So only the VM metadata kind of gets to transition over. So the downtime for your applications is minimal, and you can continue to run your business while the data is being replicated onto the Azure Stack HCI deployment. And last but certainly not the least, we support a wide range of guest operating systems all the way from 2008 R2, although I'm hoping you're not doing that just yet, all the way up to the more recent ones, including various Linux distros here. The documentation is public. You can absolutely go to the Microsoft document, the website, to be able to go see the VMware docs just there. One level deeper, double-clicking one level deeper for more of the architects in the room here. This is a simplified representation. There's obviously more stuff to it that are kind of abstracted out, but this is the simplified representation of this. So you've got your VMware deployment on premises, you've got your vCenter, you've got a bunch of virtual machines, and you have a VMware deployment there. Prerequisites can be vCenter 6.5, 7.8. We can do VMDK 8.1, 8.3. From a HCI perspective, you deploy your HCI cluster inside your data center. Make sure that there's line of sight between your VMware and your HCI deployment so the disks can copy over. And your HCI prerequisites is that it needs to be 23H2 or later. Basically, you have the right IP addresses in the VLANs that are trunked to your HCI cluster to make sure that once your VMs move over, they can continue running as is on the VMware infrastructure. Once this setup is ready, all you need to do is deploy what we call appliances. There's two appliances, one to sit on the source, which is your VMware deployment, and one to sit on the target, which is your HCI cluster. And you deploy an Azure Migrate project in the Azure portal. And with the interaction between these three components, we're now able to initiate a replication from the portal. The source appliance is able to interact with vCenter, be able to fetch the disks, send it over to a cluster share that sits inside the HCI target. And then the target appliance is now then able to take that disk and be able to spin up an Arc VM on 23H2 directly on the Azure Stack HCI cluster. That's an overall view of this. I want to pause a little bit here if you guys have any questions, and then I can just double click into each one of those phases. You guys with me so far? Good. All right.
I think one thing in the conversation you're gonna have, I think if you could share what are some of the challenges you see customer facing, since you interact with customer all the time. You know, even with public preview, even though all the features available, I think there's still some gotchas or something that customer face. If you could share, as you go through it, share some of the knowledge you have, I think it'll help a lot of people here to understand there's still some gotcha they gotta know.
Oh yeah, absolutely. I can share at least 3 or 4 off the top of my head at this point. One is, if you're trying this today or tomorrow, static IP addresses is not currently supported. We're actively working on it. That is definitely going to be something that's coming in the upcoming release in a couple of months. But if you have static IP addresses on your VMware, that does not get carried over to the HCI deployment. And that's just something that is a limitation right now. The second thing that we know of that is not a limitation per se, it's by design, is that once you move your VM over, you're now going to have to guest enable that virtual machine for you to be able to start leveraging Azure Arc effectively, right? This is a manual step that needs to be done post-migration, so just don't be alarmed if your VMs don't automatically become Arc enabled. Things like that, we've seen customers ask us, and we're actively working on a lot of those things to just fix it. Private endpoints is another thing that we're currently working on for your on-premises to be able to access your storage account more securely. So if you have a requirement for that in your enterprise, private endpoint support is coming soon. And we're thinking about other like enhancements as well to see if we can sort of I'm getting ahead of my skis here a little bit, but realistically thinking about VMware tools removals automatically being able to sort of cater to those scenarios, clustered VMs and things like that. So we're actively talking to a lot of our customers and we're hearing that feedback from them. This is a critical thing for us to work on and make sure the service matures as we go see it. So
thank you.
Some top level things. All right, so jumping right in, just the whole migration happens in 3 steps. The first step is called setup and discovery. This is where you go in and create your appliances, and I'll go into details on each one of these things. Once your appliances are set up in the appropriate source and target and they're connected to your Azure Migrate project, you can now discover VMs from your VMware deployment directly in the Azure portal, and then you can just use the Azure experience to natively migrate your VMs over. The second step, as I briefly alluded to before, is called replication. The replication is where you select the VMs that you want to migrate, and then all the disks in the VM gets copied in the background onto your Azure Stack HCI deployment. And there's something called Delta replication, which again, I'll talk to you to make sure that your disks are in sync while they're running on the VMware infrastructure. And once the replication is done, and when you're ready to actually move the VM, we actually call this cutover, right? When you're ready to cut over the VM, you declare a service window to make sure that you're able to then move the VMs over, do your testing, make sure that they're working as intended, and then you close the service window, and then your customers are now running on your Azure Stack HCI infrastructure. So 3 simple, straightforward steps. So let's go into a little bit of detail on each one of these things, right? So again, same diagram that I showed you before, just a little bit more detail with respect to the components that are available there. Just to orient you guys, on the top is Azure, the Azure Migrate project, and below the line, below the firewall, quintessential firewall line is your data center. And on the left is your VMware deployments. We have 3 VMs running there, a server, a client, and a Linux VM. And on the right, you have the Azure Stack HCI cluster that's set up with Resource Bridge and Arc VM support 23H2 clusters sitting in there. The first thing you do is effectively deploy some prerequisites, which is you need a storage path. This is a cluster share path that you need to, where the disks are going to get copied to. So you need to be able to create that, and you need to create an LNet that your VMs are going to be attached to. So these are prerequisites that just need to be done before you start your replication process, just to make sure you get those things out of the way. The storage path is a critical dependency. The LNet can be created anytime during this process, but realistically, have it created so you know what needs to happen, how you're going to do it before the actual replication takes place. Once you've deployed the prerequisites, you can go into the Azure portal and create a project, to create an Azure Migrate project in the place of your choice. And you select Azure Stack HCI as the target, and you select vSphere as your source. And what that will do is it will let you generate a key that your source appliance can use. It will also give you a download link to a source appliance, and then you download the source appliance. You can either download the zip file and then install it on a Windows Server 2022 virtual machine, or you can download an OVA file that just goes natively on top of VMware, and the source appliance gets installed there. You configure the source appliance. There's both a PowerShell-based way to bootstrap it, and then there's a clean UI that will help you configure it and connect it to your Azure Migrate project with the key that we just generated on step 2. And your source appliance will be, once it's configured, it will now be ready to start discovering the VMs. The VMs will now start showing up in your Azure portal. Once you're done there, you now need to go configure your HCI cluster. So you go select a target cluster, say I want to move it to this HCI cluster. The Azure Migrate project and your HCI needs to be in the same directory tenant. It doesn't have to be necessarily in the same subscription. But once you're able to see it, you're able to select that HCI cluster, and you want to say, I want to migrate it to this cluster. Gives you another key, and this is going to be for the target appliance. The target appliance, again, just like the source appliance, goes on the Windows Server 2022 virtual machine. You're able to then deploy it, configure it, and connect it to the Azure portal. And now these connections are all set, and then your base infrastructure is ready to go for starting to migrate, for starting to discover and creating virtual machines. Next step is replication. Once you've done that step, effectively, when you go into the Azure portal and you go into the Azure Migrate project, you will now start seeing your VMware virtual machines list show up in the Azure portal. This is what we call discovery, right? So the VMs get discovered in the Azure Migrate portal. Let's say these 3 VMs that we have, the server, client, and Linux, we're able to see it in the Azure portal, and we're able to say, select those 3 VMs and say replicate. When we do that, there is what we call an initial replication that happens, which is basically the VMs in their current running state get copied over to your Azure Stack HCI cluster onto this cluster share that you just gave us in the configuration process. We write the logs to make sure that we have, all the right information needed to track and troubleshoot and make sure that we have accurate representation of the disks. Once we're done copying these disks, we're technically good to start migrating, if you think about it. However, in most cases, that's not what we've seen customers do, right? Because once that initial replication is over, you will still need to declare a service window, make sure that you find the right ideal time to cut the VMs over. Low traffic, find out your optimal time to migrate over. So the source VM, the workload inside the source VM is still running. And so it's continuing to serve their customers. It's continuing to write data into the disks, and there's definitely some deltas that are happening to the disks. So once the initial replication is done, we kick off what we call delta replications that run every hour or so. Every hour or so, the job wakes up, it tries to move the deltas over, make sure that the disks are eventually consistent, and facilitate the workload running in the VMware. And when I said initially that this is like going to be a minimal impact migration, then the workloads are going to continue to run, this is how we're enabling it. Your applications are running, disks are being modified, and the delta replication at every hour or so copies the disks over and makes sure that things are in sync on your HCI cluster until you're ready to migrate here. Martin, I see your hand. Just give me 1 minute and I'll just get to you in like 1 second. All right. Now, once this is done, we get into the third step, which is the migration step. And at this point, you all see green signals that says, okay, great, your VMs are ready to migrate and delta replications are happening. And you decide, okay, I want to declare a service window and I want to select those 3 VMs that I want to migrate. And I literally just say cut over. When you do that, we auto pause replications. We take one final snapshot. And in this stage, you have the option to turn off the VM on the VMware infrastructure. You can tell us, turn off the virtual machines. For stateful applications, we absolutely recommend you do that because you don't want the application to be serving requests while you're making that cutover. For stateless applications, your mileage may vary. It depends on what you really want. So we've given you the option to turn off the source VM or not. And if you say turn off source VM, we stop the replication, we turn off the VM on the VMware side, we take that one last snapshot and we kind of move that last replication over as well to Azure Stack HCI. Once that disk is moved over, we then contact Arc VMs and say, create a VM from this particular running disk. The VMs get moved over to your Azure Stack HCI cluster. We say the migration has been completed, and you can now go into your VMware infrastructure, and then you can manually decommission the VMware infrastructure. The critical aspect here that you guys should notice is we've not touched the source VMs in the VMware infrastructure in any meaningful way. The disks have just been read and copied over and instantiated on the other side. So if something should go wrong, or if you change your mind, and if something else comes up where you need to go back to the VMware infrastructure, those VMs are still sitting there for you. They're just going to be turned off because you told us to turn it off. And so the data is still there, and you will still manually decommission it once you've verified everything is running properly on your HCI side. So it is to a good degree non-destructive as well. And that's kind of the summary of how this works. So I'm going to pause, and Martin, I know you had your hand up. Please go for it, sir.
Yeah, I have a question about the Delta synchronization. You say it's hourly, but what if you have a heavy VM and that's riding a lot on the disks? I've done some migrations, and then you are lagging behind on the deltas. If you have a lot of changes on the source disk, and if you then only write once an hour for a delta, you will never get caught up to the moment of zero that you can do a proper cutover, or the cutover takes a long time for the last delta. Is that going to be configurable, that you can do in less than an hour, for example? Less than hourly?
That's good input. I'm not aware of it being configurable right now. It is a hourly replication that we have going. But if you're seeing, and it's generally seemed to work for us. What we do is we kind of, when you do that Delta replication, we kind of mint an instance. So if you're actively writing to that disk, the Delta that's being written gets caught in the next hour. And you're right, if it's an active workload, the tail end, when you're ready to declare that service window and you want to do that last migration, we're able to then catch all during that part as well and be able to move the disk. So from a data loss perspective, we've not seen very much. Like there's been one instance, and I'm being honest here, there's been one instance where there was a delta of like 2 minutes or so that we saw with like a bug that we had to go fix. But realistically, in any one of these delta replications or during your final replication, your disk eventually gets into consistency. Now, you're absolutely right. If the delta is high, there's going to be a lot of data that's being copied from VMware to HCI, and that's just going to take up your traffic, and that's just going to cause that delta replication to be longer. But the job itself tries to run every hour or so. And there's safeguards built into it.
Yeah. And then I have an additional question. MAC addresses, is it also possible to migrate them over, even though they are VMware virtual MAC addresses most of the time?
We do not do MAC addresses right now. No, we do not do MAC addresses just yet.
Okay, that's the reason I ask is because I had some VMs that were licensed for an application, and that was bound to the MAC address of the VM.
Oh,
okay. So during and that was mostly with some I can call it a serial attached barcode scanners or whatever. The software wasn't that properly written, I think. But the MAC addresses were the leading component for the license of the software. And if you change the MAC address, the software wouldn't work.
Oh wow! Well, I've learned something new right now. I've not run into that situation, at least not yet. At least I might see it as we deal with more people in the public preview and GA. The biggest ask for us has been static IP addresses. That seems to be the most, like, the highest required thing. We've had peripheral MAC address conversations before, but then as you're rightfully pointing out, because it's a virtual MAC address that is like pertinent to a VMware footprint, you move it to a Hyper-V, you can persist it, but we really didn't have a solid use case on what that would mean when we persisted. So if there is a hard...
It was the only case that I saw that, but most of the time
if there's a hard requirement, absolutely. Like reach out to us and we'll see how we can make it work. It just hasn't been on the top 3-4 things on our list right now. But as we see this more, absolutely, I'd love to talk about it personally.
Okay. Thank you.
Oh yeah, thank you.
In which part of this 3-step process does the VM get arced? Is it the last one? Because that seems like a topic that a lot of customers ask.
Yeah.
Okay.
The last phase is where.
Is that an automatic or manual process being arced?
So it becomes an arc VM automatically. Okay. So when we create the VM, because that's one of the requirements for us to, the reason we need a 23H2 HCI cluster is because we can automatically make them arc VMs when they come up. you have to then go guest enable them so that you can then install like agents and Arc agents and things like that. So it becomes an Arc VM in the sense that it becomes visible to you in the Azure portal. It becomes part of the Azure Stack HCI cluster natively. And then you have to then just guest enable it so that you get things like Azure Monitor and things like that that can install agentry on top of it.
Another question that has come up with several customers is Linux VMs. Have you seen any challenge doing Linux VM migration with Azure Migrate of having some challenge that takes too long? Any issues from VMware?
Some, not many.
Okay.
Like for example, very recently, one of the customers reached out to me and said, "Hey, my RHEL VM seems to not be able to boot, and we're still working through if they've made any customizations. So if you've made any boot customizations, or if you didn't do any kind of the Hyper-V enlightenments that need to be done inside the VM when you have to take it from VMware to move into a Hyper-V. Certain enlightenments are required that is natively required by the operating system itself for you to be able to run on a different hypervisor. So we do see some funny things happening there, but we're still through the discovery process and a lot of those things. Like by and far, we've had like about, I should look at the latest telemetry data. We've had about 97, 98% success rate in the people that are trying it in the public preview right now. And we do run into some oddities here and there, but largely seems to be working for people.
I don't mean dominating question. Oh, go ahead, Benjamin.
Yeah. What about VM tools? Do those automatically get uninstalled once machines are migrated over? Is that a manual process?
Right now, it's a manual process, but we are looking into seeing what we can do about it. Like one of the things that we're doing here, if you've noticed in the way I described it, is at no point in this process are we asking you for the credentials inside the VM or to get inside the VM. So we do a lot of the background transfer and it all happens on a disk basis only. So for us to be able to go remove VMware tools, we're going to need a dedicated flow where we can ask you for the credentials to the VM and be able to run something inside the VM to go remove VMware tools. So right now it's a manual process. But we're working on, as a part of our like static IP enablement and things like that, we're working on something that can just you can prep the VM with some stuff before you migrate, and wake up on the other side. But I say wake up on the other side in the most straightforward terms. When the VM actually comes up on the HCI cluster, the preparation that you did will kind of make sure that static IPs are set and the NICs are like appropriately configured, as well as we can explore extending that to also see if we can remove VMware tools and things like that. So we're laying the groundwork for that right now. More to come.
Yeah. And the other thing I was going to mention is because you're not moving over MAC addresses, people just need to remember if they have servers that are DHCP IP addresses, they're going to have to go and make new leases on those DHCP servers because the leases are going to be tied to those MAC addresses. So they'll have to, I just want everybody to think about that.
Good point, Benjamin. Thomas?
Yes. Has there been any mention of when the next release is for the Azure Stack HCI? I know it seems to be nearly yearly that they've been coming out. So I guess that's my number one. Number two is still going to be an in-place upgrade supported, because we just bought a HCI stack, just took delivery of it today. So I'm just looking at what I can expect.
Those are unfortunately two questions I cannot take on right now.
I take that. wait, Thomas, are you a Daton customer? I forgot.
Yes. Okay. I'm with K-Line.
Got it.
Us. Yeah.
So the bill you have will be the latest 23H2. That's the latest image you have. The next release, the release train now becomes, and if Daton person is on here, they can help me. The release train now goes 2308, 23 whatever, and 24, right? So next release, you'll be able to upgrade to the next one when it comes out. I think the next big release probably come out sometime next year, but there will be solution upgrade every quarter, and those will be available to you once it's available.
If you're familiar with the current upgrades for 23H2, having the quarterly release train, I would expect that to continue, where you have to get updated to 2405.3 to go to 2408, and then you'll have to get to 2408.3 to get to 2411, assuming that's what it's called, and so on.
Okay.
I'm going to help you ask another question to Shri. So Thomas is actually a new customer who purchased 23H2, and they are going to migrate from VMware to Azure Stack HCI. I guess the question to you, Shri, is given that this is public preview, from a customer perspective who's running active VMware workload, and they start to use Azure Migrate tool, if they hit issues, how are they going to get support?
Oh, that's a very good question. Since this is public preview, we have the ability to leverage our fantastic CSS team to help with this product. Like, this is not something that things in private preview have the privilege of. You now have to engage directly with the person in engineering and kind of help resolve some of these things. And so that has like its limitations with scale and time zones and things like that. But since this is in public preview, you can absolutely reach out to the Azure Stack HCI CSS team for any issues that you're finding. And we're actively working with them to be able to funnel most of the cases to us and see how we can partner with them and help get this resolved. So if you have any support needs, go into the Azure portal, create a support ticket. You will see a line item in there for Azure Migrate. And by all means, feel free to file a support ticket to us and we'll be able to engage with you on that.
I have one final question.
Please.
I'm sorry.
Please.
Okay. The proprietary process that Azure Stack HCI uses to onboard a virtual machine and make it, light up in the portal, will that process be rolled out at some point as a separate process? I ask because if you have a Hyper-V VM, some of the legacy migration methods were to move your VMware workloads to Hyper-V and then move them to the stack or use Azure Migrate to finish, all these steps that were involved. Is that process, if I have a VM that is not Azure Stack HCI enabled, if you will that process be provided independently in the future at some point? So I can light up that VM, and make it,
Arc ready.
Yeah.
There's actually 3 questions in what you asked, and that actually warrants a follow-up because you touched upon 3-4 technologies that I can spend the next 20 minutes kind of going through all possible combinations there. Basically, if I have to frame this correctly, if you have a Hyper-V VM just sitting in plain Hyper-V clustering, and you want to be able to move it into HCI, the Azure Migrate functionality is already available in public preview for you to take a Hyper-V VM and move it into Azure Stack HCI. It's the exact same process that I spoke about in this particular call. The same components, the same process with the source target appliance. You take a Hyper-V VM, use this process, get it into Azure Stack HCI 23H2, it will automatically become an Arc VM for you.
Okay.
That's one combination. I think that's the main combination that you're asking about. Now, if you want to keep the VM in Hyper-V and you want to be able to still Arc enable it, see it in the Azure portal, then you go through a flow called Arc enable servers flow. That again involves you installing an agent inside it and configuring that agent so your VM can now be managed directly from the Azure portal. So those are the 2 fundamental variations to what you have.
Well, I guess what I was looking at is with Veeam, they are, I guess, at some point in the near future will support, Azure Stack HCI enabling a restored VM, and that process, as far as I know, is limited to the Azure Migrate program. There's no way to take just a VM, that Veeam that has moved onto your Azure Stack and light it up in the portal as not with Arc, but as a Azure Stack HCI VM.
I get it.
With full support.
Yep.
So that's what I was working on.
That we're actually working on. Like, for example, you do have a VM that's like, the way I approach it is like you create a VM natively in Hyper-V, even if it's inside Azure Stack HCI, it doesn't show up as an Arc VM because it's still a Hyper-V VM. And so we're working on we call them hydration efforts. We're working on some hydration efforts that will take the VM that's inside Hyper-V and kind of hydrate it into the Arc VM's flow. That's definitely something that's in our purview we're working on. And hopefully you're able to hear something about that soon. But yes, that is one of the requirements that we've heard pretty commonly from a lot of our customers for sure.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
Good question, Thomas. We'll be working real time with Thomas. If we hear any issue, I'm sure we'll be reaching out to you.
Absolutely.
Okay.
Any other questions from the audience here? I think this was a very good conversation. I think, as I alluded earlier, it is so critical for Microsoft to have this native tool ready to go, especially with all the VMware customer coming. Thank you for really, Ernie. Yes.
I just wanted to add, I kind of typed it in the chat already, but if you are someone that's running 22H2 and do like an in-place upgrade to 23H2, kind of what Thomas was alluding to, you're not going to be able to, those VMs are not going to automatically project into Azure Portal through Arc. Or even if you have 23H2, greenfield deployment and you old school made the VMs through like Hyper-V Manager or Failover Cluster Manager or PowerShell, there you can leverage Azure Migrate, the exact thing that we're kind of talking about here, but leverage Azure Migrate and configure the source and destination clusters to be the same. And you can effectively, I call it the ghetto hack. You could just kind of like replicate and migrate to itself, and it will self-project the VM until this projection capability becomes kind of like a one-liner command thing. That at least is a stopgap for anyone who maybe did a backup and restore and they want their VM projected. Just kind of throwing that out there as a stopgap for now.
Yeah, thanks. That's exactly what I was getting at. I couldn't explain it that well.
You can always count on Ernie to get up method.
So, but I know it's a proprietary process, and it's like it's only integrated into Azure Migrate right now. So that's what I was getting at. There's no other way outside of that to light up the VM in Azure, if you will. That's sitting there somewhere else. So that's what I was getting at. Thanks.
Yep.
It's definitely ghetto. I'll give you that. No, I've considered that quite a few times as well, seeing what could basically go wrong. The pitfall that you have to be aware of there is like, if it's a production HCI cluster and you're doing that in a production HCI cluster, you're still now taking up the potential bandwidth that reserved for like your workloads to actually run and serve. So your mileage may vary basically, but
yeah, and that's the thing. Yeah, a lot of caveats.
Yeah,
there's obviously like the downtime required. It's doing double or in some cases triplicate of the data movement your storage is going to consume. So if it's like a massive SQL server that's taking up terabytes, you're going to take up more than just the flat. It's a really, like I said, it's ghetto, but it works. If you need it in a pinch, it is doable. Or just wait like 2 months, maybe, just saying, and just be patient.
Thank you, Ernie. Appreciate that. I think that it's always, long as you customer have that conversation with us, right? But the fact that Shri is here, he has seen different corner cases, I'm sure of it. If you have questions, just reach out and don't just do it. Reach out, plan it, talk to us, then we'll verify for you and to make sure that the process is accurate. I think that's the key. Like is what Shri stated earlier. Make sure you plan for it. Don't just haphazardly do it. This is very, very important. This is good. I think we're at the end of the hour. Shri, thank you so much for coming on. I think it was very valuable. Thank you, Microsoft, for providing this native tool. It'll help a lot of people out there, customers, and looking forward to all the capability and feature you'll be adding in the future.
Yeah, thank you very much for having me here again. It's been a pleasure talking to you all. Feel free to reach out to me if you have any questions, if you want to engage on anything migration related. Yeah, happy to be here. Thank you very much, Howard, and thank you very much, Jeff.
Thank you, everybody. We'll talk to you guys soon.